Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this year's overview of the 2023 Year-End Report here for LTCC Teaching and Learning. As a reminder, you can always go to the T&L website, which is www.ltccteachingandlearning.com, and click on the Reports tab kind of on the right, and you can download this report and all the previous year-end reports, going back now 4 years since the program is in its fourth year. You can always click on the tab here on the first page, that little video icon, and it takes you to this exact video that I'm recording now. So the video overview is just to give you a sense of what's in this year's report, to give you a sense of the program, its current state, its evolution, maybe some trajectories or directions forward in terms of what it might look like coming up. So just to take you through this, I'm not going to read through every section. The first page has just an overview of teaching and learning. If you're new to the college, you can check this out, as well as our focus. So a lot of what we've been addressing is faculty professional development, and that just runs the course between stuff like online learning and learning how to do Canvas stuff in your online class to topics that we used to offer in the Teaching Talk series that covered things like de-stressing and how to achieve work-life balance. So I think it's always important at a small or a big college to have these kind of topics floating around out there. We do have opportunities for professional development, but sometimes, given the winter of this last year, the snow is finally melting my office. I can still see the berm, but it's getting much lower than it was even a week ago. But in a year like this, I think a lot of us really couldn't travel. Either we couldn't get off the hill or didn't want to. And so professional development is something that sometimes you have to do in-house through Zoom. There are organizations out there, of course, that offer stuff for online PD training and so forth. But I think it's an important focus that we have to continue to think about because we are relatively isolated here living in the mountains. Now, there have been a number of changes in year 4, and I think these are changes for the positive. Changes that have really allowed us to look at what do we do well and what are some things we can improve on. Having Dr. Ray Gamba, our new VP of Instruction, has been really great for this last year. I always say when you hire someone from the outside, they come with all this experience from different places, and they can infuse that experience in our culture. It's really the best of both worlds where you have a combination of maybe seasoned employees who've been here a while, and then we hire new employees from other districts, parts of the world, parts of the country, West Coast, East Coast, wherever, because they can infuse new energies and ideas in our organization. So this is one of the best things I think about having that transition to having a new VPAA is to sit down and say, what are some things we can change? And so I've gone over a few of these with you here. Again, we've cut back on some of the traditional things, the teaching talks, the videos. There are still some videos, as you'll see, but much smaller or much less in number. And there's a greater emphasis on really pushing that online and in-person direct contact with faculty, whether via Zoom or in person, as I have pictured here. This was a welcome back as scheduled with some pastries, coffee, some teaching handouts on the first day of classes in fall. Mark Williams came in, quite a few people came in, and I actually logged this just to see how many people were taking advantage of it. And it was, upwards of over 30 people that came by, maybe closer to 40 people. I don't have the log in front of me, but it was definitely well attended, and it was something that was better attended in the fall. That tends to be our big push with new hires. If it's full-time hires or part-time hires, we have a ton of people. Just go down to HR and ask them. They do an amazing job dealing with all these hires, and literally every week this term, at least in spring of 2023, there's been an interview of some sort and announcements from the president about hires and so forth. So that sort of energy of campus, I think, is reflected in the readjustments that we took here in teaching and learning. And so I think it's been real positive. You can see also there was work done on the faculty mentoring handbook and some other things I'll get to here in a second. Now, department leads, one of the things I really liked working on what Dr. Gamba was saying, and by the way, he's profiled here. You can always go back to that initial email that the president sent when we hired Ray to kind of get all his background if you're new to the college. There's also a really good welcome message. I encourage all of you to go to the instruction office site where you can watch that welcome message. And this is Ray here leading the department leads meeting. This is something that evolved through conversations I have typically weekly conversations with Ray. We have a meeting set up on our calendars. And this was something I suggested. Ray was really in tune with this because he said, this is something that you often have at bigger schools, but why don't we have a leads meeting here? And not only did we do that, but Ray came up with the idea, which I thought was great, to send all of the leads the daily enrollment reports, because in the past, it was just the deans that got that and maybe some members of the administration. So if you're having leads running programs, you need to have those leads in the know. And that's why we have these leads meetings. In fact, we have one coming up just next week here in the spring quarter of 2023. Now, as I mentioned, I think this was really key, this one-on-one help. And it's the kind of thing that had been done in the past, but what we did was really formalize it and kind of institutionalize it. So Ray had the really good idea of coming up with this spreadsheet. So what I do is if I have a meeting, I track that and try to put in the person's name. And I haven't shared it here. I know some of you may not want that shared publicly. But one of the ideas here is to see how effective are these meetings. And I'm not sharing the spreadsheet with you, but if I showed you, there's hundreds and hundreds of iterations of meetings with people. Sometimes in a given day, it could be 7, 10 people. And some days it might only be 1 or 2, but it fluctuates throughout the week. And one of the cool things is we've said, let's really sit down and commit to doing the 4-hour per week office hours and have those on Zoom and also here in B101A so that faculty can come by. I can make them a coffee. Instruction has been supporting coffee pods that have been able to purchase at Costco. Just gave a little plug there for Costco, but you can get a lot of coffee pods for not a lot of money to break the bank. And so offer people a cup of coffee, teaching handbooks. I have a variety of, good practices handbooks that were kind of passed down through the years. Back in the day, you may have remembered, it wasn't called Faculty Chair of Teaching and Learning, but Nancy Barkley did a position for a while that was a teaching support position. So she actually did this way before I did it and was called something else. I forget the name of it, but those books actually came from the kind of over the years from Nancy Barkley back in the day. So I really want to emphasize this. This is a readjustment, not that we weren't doing the one-on-one, but saying, let's publicize it more. Let's send this out in the newsletter, in the blog, as I call it, on the website that I'll show you. And let's really track the hours and see who's meeting, who needs the most help. And I think you'll see it's a ton of part-time faculty that need assistance, particularly part-time faculty in programs where maybe there is a dean, but there isn't a department lead. So again, emphasizing that point of contact with the college of some sort, and that people have the ability to get help on teaching strategies, on student issues in the classroom, on technology, whatever those issues might happen to be. And so I just enjoyed this year having the opportunity to meet faculty in these various events we did, the one-on-one help, all the different events that we schedule. Now, a big revision that took place this year were revisions of the 2 handbooks that we have, the faculty handbook and the faculty mentoring handbook. I won't say a lot about this. Ray has already sent out information about it. I'm in the process in the next few weeks of transforming the handbooks into a Canvas site. You can have all the links there, and then this way you can easily access stuff on your Canvas pages. There's also a PDF available as well. So that was certainly a big undertaking this year, particularly writing new content, taking some of the awkward content in the faculty handbook, which has probably had, tens of different authors, and sometimes that voice doesn't work. You would have chunks of the handbook that were written all in bullet points, and it's just not a friendly way to present things in a handbook. So this way, using a little AI, actually, I went in and rewrote some of this and said, okay, let's take the bullet points, those kind of things, and turn them into paragraphs. Also writing a lot of new content. There were things about DEI that weren't included in some of these handbooks, so I also kind of interspersed some of that new information in there. And the mentoring handbook really happened through a conversation with Ray. I know that Treva and Virat are kind of the first 2 pilots of this year, so we'll see. Certainly their feedback will be helpful, but we wanted to take the list approach of that last mentoring handbook that was like, go and meet with 40 people on campus and check it off and, attend a class, talk to the bookstore manager, all these people. And some of that's valuable, but, it was Ray's assessment and mine as well that some of that just seemed like busy work, and it didn't focus on the practical day-to-day aspects of being a brand new faculty member. I mean, when I first arrived here in 98, this place was as different as a place I had lived. It was like a mountain town. It was definitely a new experience being at a community college versus a university. So for me, that transition took a number of years, 4 or 5 years, till I really got a grasp of what LTCC is like. But we hope that at least in that first year of working here, new full-time faculty could take advantage of this handbook. And what we try to do is customize it in such a way that the mentor and the mentee can meet once a month and can also have the opportunity to discuss really key topics, like to do one meeting just on grading, to do one meeting just on student issues in the classroom, another one on technology, whatever. And informal things as well, talking about the weather. I mean, if you were new, like Virat, and you came here this year after this giant storm, this is, the second snowiest season up here, depending on where you measure it, maybe number one in some places. So it's definitely a new experience for anyone coming in this year, and who knows what the winters will be like in years to come. But I hope you'll find both of these revisions of the handbook to be a little more attractive and useful and pertinent, particularly in the mentoring handbook, hopefully something that actually helps people mentor versus just checking off a list, which is kind of the feel of some of the administrators I talked to and also some of the faculty who had gone through it. So here are some samples on this page. You can check that out. Again, the full handbooks and the Canvas sites are in the works. Those will be available by the end of the spring quarter. And again, it was a good collaborative effort, and I acknowledge a lot of you were involved in looking at things, suggesting things, and really giving advice. I think that's going to be very useful going forward. And again, as Ray has pointed out, these handbooks will continue to be, it's like Walt Disney said at Disneyland, it'll never be finished. We're constantly revising stuff and hoping that the improvements will continue to help this mentoring program and the faculty onboarding to evolve. Now, related to that, as I mentioned, there are these Canvas sites. So I've been helping out with some of the graphics on the curriculum site, on the instruction office site, and then embedded in there will be faculty handbook and faculty mentoring pages or modules. And you get a sense of what this looks like. Again, a lot of the information, links and so forth, you can reach out and I will share any of those links with you as you might need them. I mentioned this earlier, but I think we've had a couple of successful new faculty welcome events, both virtual and in person. So you could see a number of our new counseling faculty here meeting with me, and I think Kata was also there and a few others. And this was just coffee and pastries, an event at the University Center, which is always a beautiful venue to hold events. And we also had a luncheon. It wasn't as well attended. So one of the things that I think was communicated back to senior leadership was, if the luncheon is not going to attract a lot of people, is it really worth spending the money doing the catering and so forth? And that's one of the things with a new program, particularly as these welcome events hadn't been done before, trying things out, what works, what doesn't work, adapt, and then next year different things can be done. We had, Ray and I did an event, and we had Virat who attended. We also extended this to our new part-time faculty in spring quarter. So there's been a model here where every quarter we try to roll out an event, a welcome message. Where we talked about T-shirts and other LTCC memorabilia. So if you get ideas about this, reach out and give your suggestions to me or to Ray, our VPAA. And again, the onboarding can continue to improve and become more and more exciting. One of the things that was interesting, I was in the office with Lori and Ray, and we were reminiscing a little bit back to my days of being Senate president. I don't want to tell you how many times I've done it, but a lot. And in the early days here, we did a very well-attended part-time faculty barbecue. The tradition was the Senate officers would host this, and I remember many times going to Costco and Smart and Final and pushing those, giant pallet movers, getting burgers and buns and all this kind of stuff, and doing a big barbecue at the college. Well, the thing about that was we would have like upwards of 50, 60 part-time and full-time faculty who would attend. And one of the reasons was it was a barbecue combined with an informational session, typically would happen in the theater, where instruction office staff and maybe some faculty, I would, pop in there as Senate president, would welcome the faculty and would explain things, kind of like the stuff we talked about earlier with the mentoring handbook and also the faculty handbook. So I think it could be in the works next year, SLT conversation about an event like that, again, coming back on board. Now, I will say it's a bit of a challenge just logistically pulling that off sometimes if it's just one person running the barbecue, but that's something I think that can be easily worked out. But the point is, sometimes you have food involved, you have something that has a more of an event feel to it. You're going to attract maybe more people to it, and people are going to be excited about coming and learning and also getting some free food potentially. Now, one thing I will say is we've talked about expanding aspects of these events, and more particularly the handbooks, the mentoring handbook, to part-time faculty. So that suggestion has come out. I acknowledge a lot of our part-time faculty, a number of you have suggested that. I know SLT is talking about it. It does have a budgetary implication, but that could be cool. That could be something that could really help onboard part-time faculty in a more formal sense. There could be conversations with the negotiating team to talk about what this looks like from a structured perspective in terms of our associate level, in terms of that pay raise that's available, because we sometimes discover that the ETW and the OETW that can be part of that opportunity to advance and get the higher associate rate, those can fill up quite quickly. So one of the things I suggest to Ray this year is, can we expand the legitimate opportunities out there to allow people to qualify for those step advancements among our part-time faculty ranks? So continue to talk to your negotiators if you have ideas. They're always open to hearing some of these things. And definitely reach out to Ray or others in the instruction office, because a lot of great ideas have been forward in terms of improving our onboarding. And that really, for me, has been the crux of what we've done in year 4 here in T&L. And I say we, it's really kind of just me, but of course I meet with Ray, and I talked to Michael Miguel down the hallway here about DE issues. I talked to faculty at the all faculty days, etc. But it's a one-person show kind of here. So again, limited in terms of my hours per week, but there are opportunities to shift and evolve the program. So one of the big shifts this year has been to say, we need to formalize something different and new to onboard faculty more effectively. We actually had a great sit-down meeting with instruction office staff, with Ray, Lori, Kelsey, Sarah. We also have from Human Resources, Laura and Shelley. And this was a suggestion of mine because I said to Ray, hey, a couple of years ago when Dr. Risden was here, we had that similar meeting, and we didn't really create the next steps for onboarding. And a lot of that stuff has to be approved, institutionalized if there are budgetary implications at the SLT level. So there's not, I don't have like a budget per se. I don't have a budget except, departmental budget, but I don't have that kind of say in terms of how the onboarding could evolve and develop, because often it does have a budgetary implication that could be significant if you're doing catered events, and thus it'd be something to be approved at SLT level. But I just know that meeting we had was really effective. And in fact, I took some of the suggestions from it and added, see a new chart at the start of the faculty handbook where you can see what the onboarding looks like and kind of the different steps of it. So that is kind of cool. So check out some of that information. Again, all this is online and available to you, or will be shortly. T&L videos. So again, I mentioned we kind of cut back on the number of videos this year. Some of that really was COVID driven. In the COVID years, we had to do a lot of this stuff virtually because on Zoom we were shut down, except for some operations, kind of bare bones operations on campus. So now that we've moved out of COVID, I think we've seen we need some training videos, but not as many. So what I tried to do this year was to focus on key topics. So that includes, of course, keeping you up to date on YouTube and how to do some new things in YouTube, new features of Canvas, like the Canvas icon maker, and then any updates that have happened to Zoom, most notably in this last cycle, have been the addition of apps and gestures that you can use, like raising your hand, and then it recognizes that and pops the icon up for you. So there have been quite a few things since we've been, coming out of COVID that have developed, certainly on Zoom and also inside of Canvas. So this is just a summary of the videos for this year. It's still quite a bit. So a lot of these focus on AI. I would say over half the videos focus on AI. And that's kind of twofold. One is, the reason for this, one is, as I start to read more in the educational and technology literature, I start to notice the stuff on my social media feeds. I'm pretty active on Twitter, certainly active on YouTube. Facebook, I don't get a lot of great information, I would say. It's not really educational focused. But when I'm on Twitter and I start to see people talking and having conversations, expressing concerns about AI and how it's impacting the student paper, and there was that huge, almost call an expose written for the Atlantic about the death of the English paper. it really started to freak out a lot of English scholars and instructors out there. So kind of that pop culture influence that I just see because I keep up to date on all this stuff as an educator. And secondly, I started to get more and more emails from all of you on campus. People would say, hey, in fact, just yesterday, I got an email from a business faculty member saying, whoa, I have this incredible just, surge of AI generated content. So a number of us started to talk, and I said, great, we're going to continue to talk about this. We're going to eventually revise the academic dishonesty policy. And I shared a ton of these resources with this instructor. So everything from, using AI to do letter writing to thinking about plagiarism. So once you start to go down the rabbit hole of AI, it's pretty crazy. Just the amount of stuff that's happening and so quickly. And some social scientists would say that's just sort of our perspective on the present, where we think we're the most important and significant. The scale of technological change in the past is equally rapid, but we can debate some of that stuff. But the point is, AI is dramatically affecting how we do our work in the classroom, outside the classroom, in our professional lives, whatever. So I'm hoping that a lot of the AI content is going to be very helpful for you. And someone was saying to me today, Scott, I don't keep up on this stuff, but what do you recommend? And so I immediately set my whole playlist. I sent, some reports that I produced on the website, which is kind of the new newsletter format, because I'm happy to share that. And again, having this position, doing this position allows you to kind of do your jobs, and you don't have to do this extra stuff on the side. So it kind of, I think, is really one of the reasons for this particular position, is to free all of you up so that I can do the research on this, edit it, share it with you, create newsletter posts as my next point is here, and also create some of those videos. So one of the things I thought that was cool when Ray came on board was he started doing the newsletters on Sway. And those are really cool. And then I know Michael McGowl did one or two of these as well for online learning. So I thought I want to do something like this, but I want to do it on the website, because the website is that repository for everything that happens in teaching learning at the college. So when you go to the website, you can either sign up for this or go directly to the website. At the main homepage, scroll all the way to the bottom, and it's in a section called Currents, as in like the most current topics. All these different topics I share with you, depends on what it is. One day it might be a student success topic. Another day it might be a series like the AI shorts. Another day it might be a DEI focused area. There tends to be key themes that kind of crystallize just in the course of work. AI is one that happened this year. DEI stuff is huge. It's been huge for our college as more and more of these grants come online, and the grants are amazing. I'm just amazed that with the work that's done in the office, the grants office by Elizabeth and Laura, I mean, it's like amazing to see how many grants we're getting now. We have to keep up with all that. And sometimes like an emphasis there, say in the instruction office or in the grants office, can impact what we might start to emphasize in teaching and learning. If more people are going to be involved in the cultural competency and the EEO grants that are coming online soon here in the next year, then we should do more stuff in T&L via the newsletter, via videos, workshops that we can do, participation, some of the all faculty day stuff, etc. So the newsletter, I think, is a new way to present information, and I appreciate that. People have been pretty receptive to that. I actually ran into a staff person down on the other end of the college saying, hey, I saw your newsletter post. I said, oh, you did? I was just kind of blown away. I'm like, cool, people are signing up and reading it, and that's always great to hear. So Canvas Commons, just kind of continuing to update things. So as new initiatives come on board, we added a land acknowledgement. I was kind of involved in that. I want to acknowledge Kata Goralski as well. She was one who really put it on my radar that we need to think about what's the land acknowledgement that we put in Canvas, in our class syllabi, etc. So she was instrumental in getting me to think about some of that stuff. And then Laura Mattoon and others, the president's office, were also involved. And we adapted that. It passed the board. And then finally, it got updated in Canvas Commons. There's also a new AI statement that has been added. You can feel free to bring that into your class via the Canvas Commons page import feature. Website revision. This was pretty major. When Ray came on board, he asked, about the layout of the website, gave some suggestions. So I made a lot of changes in the website. and it made it easier to read. So when you go to it now, you'll see that key topics. You can scroll across and then click on those topics and then be taken to the videos. So that's been, I think, a big improvement for this year as well. I've always been someone involved in technology. I've done research in technology. I've done @ONE statewide projects writing about how to do classroom technology. When we were just on the cusp of moving to online, I was part of this statewide initiative with @ONE where we all wrote monographs and met a couple times down in Monterey and Sacramento. And we produced these monographs working with researchers, and it was just a phenomenal process. And my whole approach then was, how can I use technology as an online instructor to really allow students in anthropology and sociology classes to express their personal, or what we call reflexive opinions on particular topics. So I've always been immersed in technology, and that's something I bring to this position because my day-to-day life outside of teaching, I am, 7 days a week using some kind of technology. And typically it's media or audio, video related technology of some sort. So I continue to have an interest in this, and as mentioned in the report, definitely have been involved in conversations. Most recently, we're having a conversation. In fact, this report was made on Canva, so I'm working with Ray and the higher ed person from Canva to see about getting a license for a campus with Canva, because a lot of you use Canva. In fact, the rep from Canva said somewhere around 60 people seem to have it hooked to their ltcc.edu email. And then there's all the other people like myself. I do have a pro account now that the college pays for, but we were linked via maybe Yahoo email or Gmail email. So technology continues, I think, to always be a key emphasis for me and something I bring to the position. So top 5 impacts, I actually threw these into artificial intelligence and said, hey, what do you think's coming up? And of course, one of the key impacts that it came up with, and it might be biased because it's writing and talking about itself at the same time, but it's the era of AI. And again, this is kind of like a placeholder. It's like, hey, AI is here. What are we going to do about it? We have to adapt. I agree with a lot of you. I've had a lot of good conversations on campus. I was talking with Frank Gerdeman about this. A lot of us agree there's a pro and con side to AI. There's a benefit, there's also a drawback. So I think as educators, what we need to do, and of course, a lot of you are already doing this in your jobs, but we need to have conversations about the pros and the cons and adapt as is necessary. I'm doing this in my own class right now. I have kind of a new video I created on talking about AI and how to use it, how not to use it. And I'm doing the same thing in my Canvas announcements, offering students how to adapt and how I'm adapting as an instructor in this new era of AI. So this is the future. It's here now. We're adapting, we're dealing with it, and more conversations to come. If you're interested, my bio is in here. I just throw this in because some of you, if you're brand new, may not know me, and you may not know about my website and how to find some of that. So that is something you can look at. And then directions forward. So, this is always something that is a moving target, and it's a good thing that it's a moving target, because just like Walt's quote about Disneyland never being finished, I mean, it's not something we're ever going to know perfectly. So we go into a particular year, if it's a crazy snow year, if it's a smoke year, like with the 2 fires that have affected us over the course of my career here with staff and evacuations, just, craziness, people losing homes in the first fire, and the second one, people evacuating, and certainly some as well losing homes. But I think because of where we live and the era we live in with uncertainties, the economy, you look at our political scene, you look at violence in American life and instability, racism, white supremacy, these continue to be key issues. And you might think like, there's the outside world and there's LTCC, and those are not sort of in the same set. They actually are. I always say, like, if you're drawing this, it's like the subset of the real world is a part of, we're a part of that. We're a part of that bigger circle. We're one little blip there. And so this stuff does affect us. So those kind of, trends and issues, just as a cultural anthropologist, it's something that I keep my, pulse on, or my radar on, in terms of looking at, because it's definitely, these are issues that do impact us in terms of how we teach, how we do learning, how we do work in the library, counseling, etc. So here are some of the possible directions forward. And again, this is just kind of off the top of my head, this is not speaking to Ray or others in instruction. So I'm not saying this will be the focus in the future, but if you ask me right now, what are the top 5 or 6 key areas? These are some of the ones I think would be out there. One is the pedagogy handbook. So I believe the board/administration approved my PDL, my professional development leave application for next year. I proposed this to Ray. I said, I really want to write a pedagogy handbook. I hope to continue this position into next year and into the future. I think I'm really good at it. I think I brought a lot of hard work and dedication to the position. So one of the things I really want to do is continue the position and use the handbook as a way to help other faculty out there, maybe with some teaching techniques that you haven't heard of. For a couple of years, I was a part of a sort of train the teachers group with the American Anthropological Association. So every year at our national meetings, those of us who had won the National Teaching Award got together and we did pedagogy sessions for faculty. And in fact, we also continued with those efforts and wrote a couple of handbooks. One was a handbook that I was a co-editor of called Strategies in Teaching Anthropology, and another one was called The Joys of Teaching Anthropology. And just if you're curious, this is, I think this went into like at least 6 editions. I think this might have been the last one, but I was a contributor previous ones. And then when I got on board with the teaching group, I jumped at the opportunity to be a co-editor of this. And again, what we did was we created a handbook of teaching strategies specific to anthropology. So this PDL proposal will not specifically focus on anthropology, of course. The hard part, I think, will be writing it in such a way that it's discipline agnostic, which is hard to do. Like if you're teaching chemistry versus teaching soc versus teaching criminal justice, the content often does dictate some of the pedagogical activities you can incorporate in your class. So that will be a big challenge for it. This was The Joys of Teaching Anthropology. And the cool thing about this was kind of writing, it wasn't about teaching strategies. It was the anthropologists who had won the teaching award writing about their experiences teaching anthropology in very personal ways. And in my essay in here, I wrote about kind of some local connections, talking about challenges in teaching. And for me, it was a very insightful opportunity. But the cool thing I want to mention is we're able to feature 2 of our LTCC anthropology students on the cover. So again, this is a national publication through McGraw-Hill, and I just thought it was super cool to get our students on the map here at LTCC in terms of what they had done in some of their anthropology classes, doing projects including fire making back in the day before Melinda was here when I was teaching the archaeology class. So that's pretty cool. And the last thing I want to mention is there are books out there that focus pedagogy specifically on the DEI front, and this is something that I will certainly address in the professional development leave project. But if you know Achieving the Dream, they have this amazing teaching and learning toolkit that you can download online in PDF format, and it's wonderful in terms of incorporating diversity, DEI initiatives in your own classroom. So one of the things I really want to do in the PDL project is to develop this teaching handbook. It'll be available online. I also mentioned in my proposal, I would love to print out copies that we could give to all new faculty. I think it'd be a wonderful opportunity to kind of develop the teaching conversation, like this, but looks a little more professional. And you can actually have these printed at certain presses for, somewhere around $4 per handbook, depending on the length. So more conversations about that. Maybe I will try to see if there's grant or some money out there that could be used to cover that. So that is coming in spring of 2024 is when I propose my PDL leave. I mentioned some of these already. I won't cover them again, but AI tech and teaching will continue to be something that we'll be thinking about. Again, improved onboarding. I think improved onboarding is key. We've done some good stuff, but we have to do much more. And part of this, I think, is just my background, my previous experience working as a training coordinator for Six Flags. I did a ton of onboarding of folks via HR, interviewing new employees, and then it was my job, along with other training coordinators, to actually onboard our new employees. We trained them in safety and rides operation, and we trained them in a big push of Ray's this year where he's talked about customer service. We called this the guest first experience. We wanted to treat guests who came into Astroworld and also our fellow employees in the best, most professional way possible. So I've been thinking about onboarding. It was actually the subject of my dissertation research working at Astroworld and really thinking about this. And so for me, it's something I have a passion for and something I've seen both from the corporate side and the educational side working in different institutions of higher learning. So improving our onboarding processes, continuing process, just like my metaphor of Disneyland, trauma-informed pedagogy and DEI, we have to leverage more of this. We've got to do more activities. I'm excited about the meta major stuff, which is my last bullet point here, because we have an opportunity to really engage with more students and more communities by doing a focus on trauma-informed pedagogy, on DEI initiatives, and also really expanding the opportunities there with our meta majors. So those are the future possible areas. Again, I don't know what's happening. There's flux happening, I think, with the position. I really hope to continue to do this position into the future. I think I'm the person best able to do the kind of stuff and build the kind of stuff that I've created over the years, including the website, which is a great resource that many of you have expressed to me, all the videos, all these reports, and all that kind of stuff. So I hope to be talking to you again next year, doing the year-end report for next year. It's always a pleasure to work with all of you. Again, any suggestions, ideas, let me know. We can talk on Zoom. We can talk confidentially. Come down here to my office at the college just across Reprographics, and we'll have a conversation about teaching and learning. It's what I do. It's what I love to do, and hope to continue to do it for all of you here at LTCC. So that is it for this year. Again, reach out with questions or concerns or comments. You can always read the report in its entirety on the Teaching and Learning website and all that other ancillary information that I mentioned today here going through the report. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back with additional videos in the future.